The police slapped my 11-year-old son and destroyed our security system, so I used cloud backup video to win a 10-minute lawsuit and force entire police department reforms. My name is David Chen, and the sanctuary I built with my own hands was not merely a structure of wood and brick, but a meticulously constructed ecosystem of order, predictability, and love. It was a 2-story brick colonial nestled at the very end of a quiet, tree-lined cul-de-sac named Willow Way in the suburb of Oakwood Falls. This was a place where the most exciting event of the week was the arrival of the recycling truck, where the scent of freshly cut grass was the perfume of the weekend, and where the laughter of children playing kickball was the official soundtrack of summer evenings. I was a systems architect by trade, a profession that rewarded a mind inclined towards patterns, logic, and the elegant functioning of interconnected parts. My wife, Lena, was the heart that balanced my logic, a pediatrician whose entire life was a testament to the protection and nurturing of the young. Our greatest, most collaborative project was our 11-year-old son, Leo. He was a boy with an old soul and curious hands, whose fascination with the inner workings of things, from the complex code I wrote to the simple mechanics of a bicycle chain, far exceeded my own at that age. Our home was more than a house. It was a citadel of defined rules, shared dreams, and unwavering mutual support. A fortress we believed was impenetrable to the chaos that sometimes flickered at the edges of the evening news. Leo's 11th birthday had been approaching for months, and his request had been singular, persistent, and delivered with a level of research detail that was pure Leo. He didn't want the latest video game console or a smartphone. He wanted a 50cc motorcycle. He presented his case like a junior lawyer with printed out web pages detailing engine specifications, safety statistics, and a highlighted copy of our state's vehicle code. He argued that it was a tool for learning responsibility, not just a toy. Lena and I had lengthy, late-night discussions on the porch, sipping tea while fireflies dotted the darkness. We were cautious parents, inherently risk-averse when it came to our only child, but we also believed in rewarding maturity and fostering independence. We delved into the legalities. The state law was clear. With a parent's supervision and on private property, a minor could operate a small, off-road vehicle. Our dead-end street, Willow Way, functionally served only 3 houses and was arguably private property for the residents who used it. We laid down a constitution of rules, non-negotiable and ironclad. Rule 1. He could only ride on Willow Way, never venturing onto the main road. Rule 2. He must always wear a full-face helmet, gloves, and durable clothing. Rule 3. And adult, almost always me, must be physically present and supervising. Rule 4. He had to complete an online motorcycle safety course for youngsters that I had vetted. This wasn't a reckless indulgence. It was a calculated, parental decision to grant a measured taste of freedom, a reward for his consistent responsibility, and a practical lesson in machine operation and safety awareness. The memory of his face when he saw the bike in the garage on the morning of his birthday is etched into my mind with the clarity of a high-resolution photograph. It was a miniature, bright red Honda CRF 50F, a perfect, scaled-down machine of pure joy. A giant red bow was stuck precariously to the handlebars. Leo's eyes, behind his thick-rimmed glasses, widened to saucers. His mouth fell open, but no sound came out for a long moment. He walked towards it slowly, as if approaching a holy relic, his hand reaching out to touch the gleaming fuel tank. You got it," he finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He turned to me, his eyes shimmering. "You trust me with this, Dad?" I felt a lump form in my own throat. I put my hands on his shoulders, squeezing gently. "With rules, Leo." "Always with the rules," I said, my voice firm but warm. "We trust you to be the smart, careful, and honorable young man we know you are. This is a privilege, and privileges come with responsibilities heavier than this bike will ever be." He nodded vigorously, throwing his arms around my waist in a tight hug. "I promise, Dad, I'll follow every rule. I won't let you down." Lena watched from the doorway, a smile on her face that held both joy and a mother's natural trepidation. We were a team, and this was our collective decision. The bike represented our faith in him. The antagonist in our story was not a mustache-twirling villain, but a fortress of paranoia that stood directly next door. Mr. Harold Jenkins lived in a house that seemed to repel light and joy. A retired accountant in his late 60s, he was a man carved from granite and perpetual discontent. His blinds were always drawn. His lawn was a chemically enhanced monoculture of grass that tolerated no stray leaf or dandelion. And his presence was a cold spot on the warm street. He saw the world through a lens of suspicion and grievance. Where the rest of the street saw children playing, he saw future delinquents. Where he heard laughter, he heard a personal affront. Our previous interactions had been minor, but telling. A formally worded letter in our mailbox complaining about our golden retriever, Baxter, barking for precisely 2 minutes one afternoon when a squirrel had taunted him. A hissed comment from his driveway about our maple tree littering his pristine lawn with debris. I had dismissed him as a sad, lonely man, a minor system error in the otherwise smooth-running code of our neighborhood, a nuisance to be managed with polite indifference. I failed to comprehend how a single, malicious line of code, injected with spite, could crash the entire operating system of our lives. The foundation of the coming cataclysm was poured on a perfect Saturday afternoon, the day after Leo's birthday. The sun was a benevolent gold, the sky a vast, untroubled blue. The air was warm and carried the scent of lilacs from a bush at the end of the street. Leo, practically vibrating with suppressed excitement, suited up in his new helmet, gloves, and a padded jacket. I walked beside him as he pushed the little red bike out of the garage and onto the smooth asphalt of Willow Way. The engine sputtered to life with a cheerful, puttering sound. He looked at me for one final confirmation. I gave him a thumbs up. "Remember, slow and steady," I said. "Just get a feel for the throttle and the brakes. We're not in a hurry." He nodded, his face a mask of intense concentration behind the visor. He eased the bike forward, moving at a pace barely faster than a brisk walk. He puttered down the center of the wide cul-de-sac, practiced a slow, wide turn at the end, and came back towards me. The putter of the engine was a friendly domestic sound, harmonizing with the distant chirping of birds and the hum of a lawnmower a few streets over. I felt a profound sense of paternal pride. This was parenting in its ideal form, I thought. Guided risk, earned trust, shared joy. It was a perfect loop of love and responsibility. But from behind the slatted blinds of number 4 Willow Way, Harold Jenkins was compiling a very different report. He didn't see a father and son sharing a milestone. He saw a suspicious individual. He saw an unregistered vehicle. And in a catastrophic leap of illogic, born of deep-seated prejudice and a mind fed on a diet of fear-based news channels, he claimed to see an unconcealed weapon. He later testified under oath that the way the rider was moving and the type of vehicle led him to assume the person was armed. His call to 911 was not a concerned inquiry from a neighbor. It was an act of psychological arson, a deliberate and malicious falsification designed to summon maximum force. "Yes, I need to report a crime in progress," he said, his voice a low, urgent whisper into the phone. A tone he must have believed conveyed gravitas, but instead sounded theatrical. "There's a man on a motorcycle, no license plate. Looks like a gang member. I think I see a gun on his hip. He's riding up and down my street in a threatening manner, scaring the families here. You need to send someone immediately. He's at the end of Willow Way." He didn't step outside. He didn't call my phone. He didn't walk over and ask, "David, what's going on?" He went straight to the nuclear option, bypassing all community norms and injecting our peaceful street with a venom of his own creation. He was the corrupted node, the Trojan horse, within our gates, and with that one call, he initiated a sequence of events that would test the very foundations of the sanctuary we had built. The response from the Oakwood Falls Police Department was not a calibrated, investigative procedure. It was a violent, overwhelming system shock. The familiar, comforting sounds of the neighborhood were eviscerated by the primal wail of sirens. Not one, but 2 black and white SUVs screeched into the cul-de-sac, their tires chirping on the asphalt. their light bars painting the tranquil houses in frantic strobing shades of red and blue. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The lawnmower down the street cut off abruptly. The chirping birds fell silent. Leo, who had been midway through another careful turn, froze. The little bike wobbled as his hands clenched the handlebars, his knuckles white. I could see the panic in his eyes even through the tinted visor of his helmet. My own heart launched into a frantic, hammering rhythm against my ribs. Every parental instinct screamed to get between my child and this sudden, inexplicable threat. I moved quickly, stepping in front of the bike, my hands held up in what I hoped was a universal gesture of non-aggression and confusion. "It's okay, officers," I called out, my voice straining to be heard over the sirens, which thankfully cut off, leaving a ringing silence in their wake. "This is my son. It's his birthday present. We're on a private street. We have a permit for off-road use." The lead officer, a man built like a refrigerator with a severe buzz cut, emerged from the first SUV. His nameplate read, "Draper." His eyes, cold and assessing, scanned the scene, completely ignoring my words. His hand rested on the butt of his holstered sidearm. His partner, a younger, leaner officer named Miller, mirrored his posture, flanking him. Their training, their entire operational mindset had been poisoned by Jenkins's fraudulent report. They weren't seeing a father and a son, they were scanning for a gang member and an unconcealed weapon. They were trying to force our reality to fit the fiction they had been dispatched to confront. "Step away from the vehicle, sir," Officer Draper barked, his voice a low, threatening rumble that carried unnaturally well in the quiet street. It was a tone that brooked no discussion, a tone that demanded immediate, unquestioning submission. "He's 11 years old," I repeated, a desperate edge creeping into my voice. I pointed to Leo, who was now visibly trembling. "There is no weapon. This is a terrible misunderstanding. Our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, he must have called you. He's mistaken." But they were not there for dialogue. They were there for compliance. Officer Miller moved past me, his focus entirely on Leo. "Son, get off the bike. Now, keep your hands where I can see them," Miller commanded, his voice sharp and unnecessarily loud, causing Leo to flinch. "Please, you're scaring him," I pleaded, my own fear beginning to curdle into something harder, angrier. This was wrong. This was so profoundly, obviously wrong. The line in the sand was drawn not in the sand, but on the meticulously maintained lawn of my own property. As Officer Miller loomed over my terrified son, his posture aggressive and his tone accusatory, my mindset shifted irrevocably. The cooperative citizen vanished. The systems architect, the documenter, the father whose primary duty was to protect his child, took over. I needed a record. I needed evidence. I pulled my smartphone from my pocket, my movements deliberate and calm. "I am recording this interaction," I stated clearly, activating the video camera and making sure the screen was visible. "You are on my property and you are threatening my child over a complete falsehood." The moment the small red recording light blinked on, the atmosphere transformed. The veneer of professional procedure shattered, revealing the raw, unaccountable power beneath. It was as if I had flipped a switch that disabled their programming and activated a more primal, defensive aggression. Officer Draper's face darkened. He took 2 quick, heavy steps towards me. "Turn that off. You are not permitted to record me. I have a First Amendment right to record police officers conducting their duties in a public space," I replied, my voice shaking slightly, but the phone held steady. I was quoting law, appealing to reason. It was a language they were no longer speaking. "You are under arrest for illegally recording a police officer in the performance of his duty," he roared, the volume of his voice causing Leo to cry out. It was a breathtaking lie, a blatant and illegal power move designed to silence dissent and establish total control. As he lunged for me, his hand reaching for my phone, Leo, in a burst of terrified, selfless courage, darted forward and snatched the device from my hand. "Don't hurt my dad!" he screamed, his small voice cracking with panic. But he kept the camera pointed squarely at Officer Draper. What happened next unfolded in a slow-motion nightmare of state-sanctioned violence. Officer Miller's reaction was swift and brutal. He didn't ask for the phone. He didn't command Leo to drop it. He simply ripped it from my son's small, clenched hand with such force that I heard Leo's fingers pop. Then, with a look of pure contempt, He raised his boot and brought it down on the phone, which was lying on the pavement. The screen exploded into a spiderweb of cracks, and the casing shattered with a sickening final crunch. The recording light died, but the horror didn't end there. As Leo stared in shocked disbelief at the destroyed phone, Officer Miller, in an act of pure, unforgivable malice, swung his open hand and slapped my son across the face. The sound was a sharp, wet crack that seemed to suck all the air out of the street. Leo's head snapped to the side. He let out a choked cry, stumbling backwards and falling onto the grass, his helmet clunking against the ground. A bright red handprint bloomed instantly on his pale cheek. A sound tore from my throat, a raw, animalistic roar of pure rage. I ceased to be a thinking man. I was a force of nature, a father whose child had been struck. I rushed at Officer Miller, but I was no match for their trained strength. Officer Draper caught me in a brutal bear hug, lifting me off my feet. I struggled, kicking, yelling curses I didn't know I knew. They wrestled me to the ground, the weight of them crushing the air from my lungs. I felt the rough texture of the grass against my cheek, smelled the damp earth. They wrenched my arms behind my back, and the cold, hard steel of handcuffs clamped shut around my wrists with a definitive click. As they roughly hauled me to my feet, I caught a glimpse of Leo still on the ground, holding his face and sobbing uncontrollably. The look in his eyes, a mixture of terror, pain, and betrayal, will haunt me for the rest of my days. They shoved me into the back cage of Officer Draper's SUV. The world was reduced to a small, smeared window. I saw Draper look up, his gaze scanning the front of our house. It settled on the small, discreet black dome of the CCTV camera mounted under the eaves of the porch. A cold understanding dawned in his eyes. "Miller," he said, pointing. "Get that." The whole system. Without a moment's hesitation, without a warrant, without any legal justification whatsoever, they entered our home. Lena, who had come running out at the sound of the commotion, was held back by another officer who had arrived as backup. I watched, helpless and seething in the cage, as Officer Miller emerged minutes later carrying the black DVR unit from my home office closet. They took it, believing they were seizing and destroying the only objective record of their criminal actions. It was the ultimate betrayal. The men sworn to uphold the law had become its most flagrant violators, and they were now actively, methodically engaged in a cover-up. They were corrupt nodes systematically purging their own error logs. But their understanding of modern systems was as flawed as their moral compass. They saw a physical box and assumed that was the entirety of the data storage. They didn't know, couldn't have conceived, that the system I had installed was a cloud-based, enterprise-grade security suite with redundant, off-site encryption. The DVR was just a local cache. Every second of their tyrannical performance, from their aggressive arrival to the slap, the arrest, and their illegal entry into my home, was being silently, continuously and irrevocably uploaded to a secure server in a data center in Nevada. Their desperate attempt to destroy the evidence was, in fact, creating the most damning evidence of all, proof of their corrupt intent. The shift within me completed its final, cold transformation in the stark, dehumanizing environment of the holding cell. The concrete walls, the stainless steel toilet, the sour smell of disinfectant and despair. This was the reality their lies had manufactured. The initial white-hot rage had cooled into a solid, diamond-hard core of resolve. They hadn't just assaulted my son and arrested me. They had attacked the fundamental operating system of my family and my trust in the social contract. And I was an expert in systems. They had tried to erase data, and data was my native language. This was no longer a personal tragedy. It was a catastrophic system failure that demanded a systematic, meticulous, and utterly ruthless response. I was granted my one phone call after Lena secured a bondsman, and I was released on bail several hours later. I didn't call a criminal defense attorney. I dialed the number for Sarah Bennett. Sarah wasn't just a lawyer. She was a force of legal nature, a partner at Bennett & Shaw, the most formidable civil litigation and constitutional law firm in the state. I had worked with her firm years earlier as a consultant on a complex data security case for a corporate client, and I had been deeply impressed by her intellect, her tenacity, and her cold fury in the face of injustice. "Sarah, it's David Chen," I said, my voice flat and stripped of all emotion when she answered. I knew I had to be clinical to be believed. "David, it's late. What's wrong?" Her voice was alert, sensing the crisis in my tone. "The Oakwood Falls PD raided my home this afternoon. They assaulted my 11-year-old son. slapped him in the face. They arrested me for the crime of recording them. They confiscated and destroyed my personal property, and they stole my CCTV DVR from inside my house to erase the footage of them doing it. There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her brilliant, analytical mind. "Give me your address. Don't talk to anyone else. I'm on my way," she said, her voice now all business. All business. While Lena tended to a traumatized Leo, his cheeks swollen and purplish, his spirit shattered, Sarah arrived at our home. She carried a sleek leather briefcase and wore an expression of focused calm that was like a dam holding back the torrent of our family's turmoil. She sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we had shared so many happy family meals, and listened as I laid out the entire sordid sequence of events. I spoke in a monotone, presenting the facts as if I were giving a post-mortem on a server crash. The trigger, Jenkins' call. The faulty response, the police's aggression. The system failure, the assault and arrest, and the attempted cover-up, the theft of the DVR. When I finished, Sarah steepled her fingers. "Okay, David, Lena, we need to build a fortress. Not of emotion, though God knows you have every right to it. We need a fortress of fact, of law, and of public opinion. We will attack on 3 fronts simultaneously. Our strategy, devised in that kitchen under the warm, domestic light, was a 3-pronged assault on the fortress of lies that had been constructed around us. Prong 1. The digital evidence, the unassailable core. This was our bedrock, our smoking gun. While Sarah took notes, I brought my laptop to the table. My hands, which had been shaking with adrenaline hours before, were now steady as I logged into the secure web portal for our Sentinel Secure cloud service. The login screen loaded, and there it was, a list of motion-activated events from the afternoon. I clicked on the file labeled Front Porch 1522. The video player opened. There was no audio, but the high-definition video was more eloquent than any soundtrack. We watched the silent movie of our own victimization. We saw the aggressive, weapon-ready posture of Officers Draper and Miller from the moment they exited their vehicle. We saw me, hands raised, trying to explain. We saw the moment I started recording on my phone. We saw Officer Draper's face contort with rage as he advanced on me. We saw Leo's brave, desperate act of grabbing the phone. We saw Officer Miller's violent snatch, the deliberate stomp of the boot, and then, the image was crystal clear, undeniable. The swing of his arm and the open-handed slap across my son's face. We saw me being wrestled to the ground and cuffed, and we saw them, clear as day, pointing at and then entering our home to remove the DVR unit. Sarah watched, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "That's it," she said softly. "That's the case. We have them on unlawful entry, excessive force, assault and battery on a minor, false arrest, and evidence tampering. This is a prosecutor's dream. We downloaded the highest resolution copies and stored them on multiple encrypted drives." Prong 2. The paper trail, the legal onslaught. Sarah moved with the speed and precision of a military campaign. The following morning, she filed a massive federal civil rights lawsuit under Section 1983. But she didn't just sue Officers Draper and Miller as individuals. She sued the entire Oakwood Falls Police Department for negligent training, supervision, and retention. She sued the city for maintaining a custom and policy that allowed for this kind of brutal, unconstitutional behavior to occur with impunity. The lawsuit was a voluminous document, detailing every violation. The jury deliberation was brief. They returned a verdict that was a complete and total vindication. They found for us on every single count: unlawful entry, excessive force, assault and battery, false arrest, violation of civil rights, and evidence tampering. The judge, in his final sentencing remarks, excoriated the police department for its systemic failures, its culture of impunity, and its blatant disregard for the constitutional rights of the citizens it is sworn to protect. The financial judgment was historic and staggering, $8 million to be paid by the city. But the true reckoning extended far beyond the financial. The criminal justice system, spurred by the public outrage and the federal verdict, finally acted. Officers Draper and Miller were immediately fired. The district attorney, under immense pressure, convened a grand jury, which indicted both officers on criminal charges of assault, filing a false report, and evidence tampering. They would eventually plead guilty and receive prison sentences. The police chief was forced into early retirement. Most significantly, the Department of Justice opened an investigation, which resulted in the Oakwood Falls Police Department being placed under a federal consent decree, mandating sweeping reforms in use of force policies, de-escalation training, accountability measures, and respect for constitutional rights. The peace that gradually seeped back into our home on Willow Way was of a different, more durable quality than the naive peace we had enjoyed before. It was a peace earned through brutal confrontation, fortified by the knowledge that we had stood our ground against a corrupt and powerful system and, through resilience, truth, and strategy, had emerged victorious. The financial settlement was not a lottery win. It was a resource, a tool for healing, and for ensuring such a thing could never happen to us again. We used a significant portion to pay for the best child trauma therapist in the state for Leo, a kind and patient man who helped him process the terror and betrayal. We set up substantial trust funds for Leo's future education and well-being, and we made large anonymous donations to the ACLU and other organizations dedicated to fighting police misconduct and protecting civil liberties. Leo's recovery was the slowest and most precious process. For weeks he was jumpy, withdrawn, and plagued by nightmares. The sound of a siren would make him freeze. But with therapy, time, and the unwavering constant love and presence of his family, he began to heal. The incident didn't break him. In a strange way, it forged something stronger in him. He had seen the face of injustice up close, and he had seen his family defeat it not with violence, but with truth and the law. He still loved mechanics, but his focus subtly shifted. He started talking about constitutional law, about civil rights, about building systems, not just digital ones, but legal and social ones, that could protect people from power. "I want to be like Sarah when I grow up," he told me one evening. "I want to be a shield." The little red Honda sat untouched in the garage for almost a year, a silent monument to that terrible day. Then on a Saturday morning, remarkably similar to the one that had started it all, Leo was staring at it, a thoughtful expression on his face. The physical scar on his cheek had faded to a faint, silvery line, but the memory was still there. "Dad," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "can we try again? With the rules. All the rules." My heart swelled with a pride so profound it was almost painful. He wasn't just asking to ride the bike. He was asking to reclaim a piece of his childhood, to overwrite a bad memory with a good one, to prove that fear would not have the final word. "Always with the rules, son," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Always." We walked the bike out to the street together. The sun was warm, the sky was clear. This time, the only sound was the cheerful putter of the small engine and the sound of my own proud, grateful heart beating in time with my son's courageous recovery. Harold Jenkins sold his house at a loss and moved away a few months after the trial. The new neighbors were a young family with a boy Leo's age. We often see them now, playing catch in the street, their laughter once again the dominant sound in the cul-de-sac, a sound of normalcy and healing. I learned that a sanctuary is not defined by the absence of threats, but by the strength of its defenses and the courage of those within to repair its walls when they are breached. I learned that the most potent weapon against a lie is not a louder shout, but an unerasable, objectively verifiable truth. We had taken the worst day of our lives and, through sheer force of will, meticulous preparation, and an unshakable belief in justice, had transformed it into the foundation for a safer, more courageous, and more resilient future. The circle of trust broken so violently had been repaired stronger than ever, an unbroken circle of love, law, and the relentless pursuit of what is right. If you believe that your home is your castle and your family your most sacred trust, then this story is your battle plan. Arm yourself with knowledge of your rights. Fortify your space with technology that cannot be easily compromised. Document everything, and never ever be afraid to hold power accountable, for the systems designed to protect you can sometimes be turned against you. But remember, the truth, once properly documented, strategically deployed, and defended with unwavering courage, is an armor that cannot be pierced, and a sword that can and will cut through any lie. Cut through any lie.